Great. Good morning, everybody. So, welcome to the 18th Asia Clean Energy Forum. And this is like Groundhog Day. Once again, we're going to talk about energy efficiency as the first fuel. I think we first started talking about that in the early 2000s. ASEF started in 2005. This is number 18. My name is Peter DuPont. I'm an ASEF groupie. It's my 17th ASEF. I also run a company called Asia Clean Energy Partners, and I work with a global network called the Private Financing Advisory Network. I am here in place of my business partner who is supposed to be moderating, is Mark Lister. So Mark curated the session. Unfortunately, he had a family matter. He was not able to join us today, so I'll try to do him proud. I'm very excited about this session. We're going to, so the title of the session is Innovations in Energy Efficiency for Deep Decarbonization. Okay, so what does that mean? So the context I'm going to go back to is this idea of energy efficiency as the first fuel. So IEA projections of greenhouse gas emissions consistently say that we need to get at least 40 to 50% or more of our greenhouse gas reductions from energy efficiency. But we're lagging far behind that because of the challenges of you have many different actors in multiple locations and the challenges of financing energy efficiency, and the ESCO model is not doing as much or as fast as we would like. So what you're going to hear today is 4 perspectives on decarbonizing, and I'd like you to get your questions ready for a robust discussion. We're going to hear about the garment industry in Cambodia. We're going to hear about green buildings and green bonds in Asia. We're going to hear about an energy efficiency grant facility covering Southeast Asia. And we're going to hear about economy-wide energy savings potential in South Asia. So for each of these, what I want you all to keep in mind and what I've talked to the speakers about is, in terms of energy efficiency, what is the problem we're addressing? What is the implementation problem? What is the problem about scaling up more energy efficiency or productivity improvements? What is the solution to the problem or challenge? What they have learned, and what are some actionable steps? So hopefully by the time we get to Q&A, we'll have a robust discussion. Now we do have an app where you can put questions in, but my view is we've used a lot of greenhouse gases already to get here. We might as well use some hot air here while we're here, ask questions in person rather than typing into an app. If you're shy and you want to type a question into the app, that's fine, but we'll prioritize questions from the floor. Again, we're aiming for about 45 minutes, actually 40 minutes exactly. I'll get into the timing in a moment, of presentation, and then at least 30, 35 minutes of discussion and question Q&A. Okay, so now I'm going to go to the market that I'm setting up today. It's a market in time. I'm the market maker. Each speaker has 10 minutes, okay? If they go under, if they actually have a credit of a minute, which somebody else has to buy, okay? If they go over, they have to buy a credit from somebody else. So we're gonna have a market with 4 players. Each one has 10 minutes, and I'm the market maker. So I have a potential real downside, but I also have an upside. Okay, with that, we're gonna go on to the first discussion, the first presentation. And I'd like to introduce Mahfouz Rahman from the Global Green Growth Institute. And he is going to talk about the garment industry in Cambodia and talk about the work that they've been doing in the supply chain. And we look forward to you, Mahfouz. And we will wait till you get up here to start the 10 minutes. We don't want to lose any seconds on that.
Thank you, Peter. Very good morning, everyone. I work for Global Green Growth Institute, GGGI. This is an intergovernmental international development organization. We have 44 member countries. We provide technical assistance, including Cambodia. In Cambodia, we have a project called Switch Garment Project that is financed by European Union Switch Asia Grants Facility. And here, as you understand, we look into the garments industries and only the sustainable energy perspective of the garments industry. In Cambodia, the garments industry is the biggest pillar of the economy, and we try to switch the energy profile of that very important industry in Cambodia to a much more sustainable energy profile. Okay. Well, I get the help to put my slides back. So just to set the background, this switch garment project is being implemented by a consortium. We have JERES, an international organization, but a very important partnership with TAFTEC. You see the name TAFTEC is the Garment Manufacturers Association in Cambodia. Please take a note of that because we'll be discussing about TAFTEC a lot, and this partnership actually helped us quite a lot in implementing. We are also closely working with the Ministry of Environment and also Ministry of Innovation, Science and Technology, Cambodia. To introduce the project, we look into different aspects. Of course, in Cambodia, we look into the policy aspects of implementing energy efficiency and renewable energy in the garments industries. What are the barriers in terms of policy perspective? We also look into the capacity building of the factories in terms of providing training and also conducting energy audits to realize the potential over there in the garments industries. But lastly, we also look into the access to finance. These are the main aspects of Switch Garment project. For the policy component, until very recently, we did not have any national policy in Cambodia. Back in September 2022, we had the first national energy efficiency policy adopted by the royal government of Cambodia. And still, to make it implemented in the ground, we are waiting for the related sub-decrees, which will be talking about the energy management system, MEPS, standard leveling, so many things. So still, it will take time. Our project started back in May 2020. It's a 4-year project. 3 years already passed. So we did not wait for that national policy to come. We knew that a policy is on the way, under development, but it took quite a lot of time. What we did, we introduced a garment sector specific energy management program, which we call Green Model Factory Program. Here, as you expect, you can go to the slide to see into the details. This is like 3-stage project program. So a factory who is willing to take part in this program is a voluntary tool, so we don't want to push initially. So we want to pull, we want to attract the factories to come and participate in this program and expect there are different indicators for each phases. So if you meet the indicators for phase 1, you upgrade to phase 2, and thereby, lastly, you go to the phase 3, and then you get an award. But now the question would be, who would be implementing this? TAFTEC, as I mentioned before, the Garment Manufacturing Association. Then again, the question is, do they have the capacity? We are building their capacity. They have a dedicated training institute who has the technical person, but we are providing the capacity building program to that training institute, which is called Cambodian Garment Training Institute, CGTI. So that's how we are planning to launch it very soon. It's already approved by the TAFTEC board members. Now we are also working with the ministries to get it adopted by the government's sake into the program. To demonstrate this, as I have mentioned, one of our component is also conducting energy audits. We conducted 50 energy audits in Cambodia. We have 750 garments industries. So we conducted 50 of them, 50 energy audits. Then again, as you would understand that for 50 energy audits, free of cost, we had to talk with more than 100 factories to convince to offer them the free of cost energy audits. Then again, it was successful because of the network that TAFTEC has. TAFTEC has the 750 member factories, so it's really helped to get all those 50 factories on board to conduct energy audits. So now we have all the information, primary data. We know what is their energy profile, how do they use their energy, and what is their emission profile also. And you would also understand Cambodia has one of the highest energy tariff in the region. So the importance of energy efficiency and also going for solar rooftop for the garments industries is a must. What is the investment potential in Cambodian garments industries? For the 50 of them, you don't need to look into all the figures, but the most important figure is the total amount of like 18 million US dollar of investment we need to implement all the energy audit recommendations that came into the energy audit reports. So 750 factories, but we are targeting only the 50s. Out of those 750, then the figure is around like 20 million US dollar we need to mobilize somehow. And if you extrapolate this number to 700 or 750 plus, we are talking about a market of like 250 million US dollar. But initially, to start with, the financing thing, we conducted these energy audits. We also conducted several market surveys. We looked into how the energy service market looked like. We looked into how the energy lending market service looked like. What are the existing financing schemes that the local financial institutions or any other development financial institutions are offering. The thing is, there is no dedicated sustainable energy financing in Cambodia. And of course, the commercial banks, the cost of the fund is beyond 12%, and they ask for up to like 200% of collateral, 10 or short. So we are trying to address those barriers, existing market barriers, in terms of introducing a financing scheme. We need like 20 million US dollar to target initial 50 factories. We conducted financial, so we developed a financial model. We analyzed the financial model in 3 different scenarios. We know like energy efficiency and solar are 2 different profiles. So we did it separately for energy efficiency and solar. We also conducted like the simultaneous financial model for energy efficiency plus solar. The business model or the financial indicators like IRR and the payback periods already looked interesting, but then again, we are talking about a market in Cambodia where they always look into the short term. I will discuss this in my later slides, but the thing is, any intervention that comes with more than 4 to 5 years of payback period is not that interesting for the factories. Yeah. For the solar one, you'll be surprised to see that the payback period is close to the 10 years. So where is that? In Cambodia, until very recently, there was a capacity charge. That means if you want to have solar in your rooftop, you need to pay $5 per kilowatt per month to your contracted facility. So that's why the payback period looks like the policy is being changed now, but we are still waiting for more clarifications. So we did this financial model. Now we are talking with many different local financial institutions, the development financial institutions, to see what is the best financing scheme that we need to introduce to the garments industries in Cambodia. So this fund would be open for any of the garments industries or to the energy service provider who is willing to access this fund. So it could be a development financial institutions coming up with a refinancing facility to a local bank, or there are a couple of local banks who are willing to provide concessionary financing from their CSR fund we are discussing. So we are also trying to bring in the possibility of carbon financing into the model. So what we have learned, originally I come from Bangladesh, where we also have like thousands of garments industries, but the situation in Cambodia is completely different. There are a few factors which are actually impacting this sustainable energy business in garments industries, which has nothing to do with the energy. If you look at the Cambodian garments industry, 90% of them are owned by the foreign investors. And the building, the facility of the garment is actually leased, not owned by the garment manufacturer themselves. So if you want to go for a long-term planning, if you want to change the rooftop, if you want to have financing, the financial institution would not be happy to provide the financing. I mean, they will not feel comfortable, of course. There are a lot of scaling up opportunities we are discussing. We can extend this opportunity to other garments industry beyond 50, or maybe beyond the garments industry. We have few other promising industries coming up, and then we can make it really big. This green model factory program that I have discussed, we are discussing also to implement in other industries. My time is up, and thank you so much. Any questions I can take into the question and answer session. Thank you so much.
So Mahfouz, thank you very much. So he values, they put a value on time. He went over a little bit, but not too much, 30 seconds. So we're over 30. We'll keep track as we go along. No, 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 no. It's all once the clock starts. Come on. I set the rules. I'm the market maker. I set the no. Very, very nice, and some very interesting questions that I would like to get into because on your the schematic of the sort of the guarantees and the escrow payments and the banks, the brands brands were missing. Lots of things to talk about there. Really great, about in terms of how you scale this up and with the problems you mentioned of a very dispersed and diverse set of foreign-owned factories that the brands don't have that much control over. Good. So the next we're going to go on a trip to look at green buildings, particularly financing green buildings, and I'd like to introduce Dina Azgalieva. I think I pronounced that right. She's with the ADB Institute, and she's going to talk about financing green buildings, barriers, policies, and solutions. Thank you, Dina. You have the floor.
Thank you for introduction. Yeah, thank you for coming to this session. And I'm glad to present it after Mahfouz because this is continuation of the buildings, energy efficiency improvement in buildings. And like Mahfouz finished with one of the barriers, like owner doesn't want to really to make energy efficiency improvement, right? Because he's not the one paying bills. But the company who is renting also not interested because this is not their building. So that's one of the challenges for energy efficiency improvements, unlike say renewable energy. So that's a challenge. So what is green buildings? Actually, on many pictures, people imagine building which have lots of trees and looks green, but actually it's not. By just looking at the building, you never know, is it green building or not green? It could be gray color, block, and it could be green. Actually, the building we are right now, it's a green building. How do I know? At the lobby, when you enter this building, there is a plate which certified by LEEDs saying that this is green building, so you can check. Okay, so green buildings are those which either constructed with using green technologies like green steel, recycling material, and also have efficiency improvements like energy, water. So it's not only energy. Green building, it's not just energy efficient building. It's any resources efficiently used, construction resources, water, and so on. So above green buildings, there is also net zero buildings, but those are very, very limited. They are not so widespread. There are many challenges to them. Why? Because they have to be like low rise. They need to have enough own energy to be net zero carbon. So, but green buildings actually, it's better than energy efficient building, but more, I think, can be widely spread comparing to net zero carbon building. So that's why I want to talk about green buildings. So there are many challenges, as I said, with buildings. Buildings pollute, like 1/3 of emissions come from buildings and 1/3 of energy demand come from buildings. So if we can make buildings greener, I think that can lead to great emission reduction and energy demand reduction as well. There are many solutions to make buildings greener, construction and also use. I'm not good. Okay. But as I mentioned, there are barriers. Like I think I started with barriers, and Mahfouz mentioned like owner, rental, and who should pay for efficiency improvements. So here are examples of the buildings. Building can be constructed as green. That's the best. That's the best. If building can be constructed as green, we can reduce more emissions. Why? Because when it's constructed, constructor will use, let's say, green steel, green cement, recycle material, efficient use of material, construction material, recycle material, and so on. So example of this in Malaysia, Merdeka Tower, I think they say one of the tallest buildings in Asia will be once finished construction. But it not necessarily, because we already have many buildings, right, in the city, which are not green. So can we do something with them? Yeah, we still can make them green, even the building was constructed before. So as I said, this example of the building, which was retrofitted to be green, and also this GPS building. Sorry, and also they can be like refinancing. So when the building was done before green many years ago, but company can apply for green loan and for refinancing for the past loan. So this is example as well. So building can be constructed as green and then retrofitted to become green later, or even refinance for the past when it became green few years ago. Yeah, so now how to finance green buildings? The main advantage of green buildings, why your green building should be green, right? Not just energy efficient. The reason why, because it helps to attract investors, responsible investors, especially foreign investors. Because there are now many investors who have green like targets, pledges, and so on. So they have, for example, 10% of all investments should be green, right? So then this kind of investors can be attracted using green buildings. And one of the financing instrument, green bonds. So, green bonds were growing fast, very popular. And many people associate green bonds with renewable energy. Yeah, green bonds finance renewable energy, but not only. They also can be used for green buildings. Okay. Okay, now, so what green bonds are used to finance? Yeah, as I said, mostly energy, but also green buildings. In fact, these are two main sources of financing, energy and green buildings. In Southeast Asia, particularly green buildings popular, like nearly half of green bonds used for green buildings. And I think you understand why. In Southeast Asia, cooling is used like every day of the year, right? So then any efficiency improvements can be paid back earlier, faster. So green buildings particularly popular in Southeast Asia. Okay, I'll skip this one. So, but there are also it's easy to say, oh, green bonds can be used to finance green buildings, right? But there are challenges. It's not easy, especially for us, for developing Asia, for countries, for developing Asian countries. Why it's difficult for developing Asian countries? First of all, our local currencies. Local currencies are weak and highly volatile or depreciating. So this causes a very big challenge, because if you want to sell your green bond, you better issue it in US dollars or euro, like kind of strong currency. But imagine then how you're going to pay back this loan if you borrow using US dollars on euro, right? It's very risky with local currency. When the revenue come in local currency, right, but you have to pay in euro or USD, becomes very challenging, right? So then also uh, usually developing Asian countries, not so private sector, not so experienced with issuing green bonds often, right? So not even green bonds, even sometimes bonds, not so experienced. So when they do it first time, it's always risky. Who will buy my bonds? Is there demand for my bonds if I issue them? Because once you issue them, it's actually costly. It costs a lot. So you want to be sure you can sell them. So that's a challenge. And also there is a challenge with low risk rating. In developing Asia, there are more companies who got low risk rating or even no risk rating at all. So then how they can sell these green bonds if they have low risk rating? So these are challenges, but there are also solutions. Government can support, like, for example, green bond grants, one of the popular policy to support green bonds. And it was provided in many countries. So they cover 90 to 100% of cost of issuing green bonds. Because as I said, issuing green bonds is costly. So that cost could be covered by the grant. And it was applied in Hong Kong, Malaysia, Singapore, Japan. So they usually cover up to around $70,000. Um, and of course, there is eligibility criteria who will get it. So I would like to maybe, sorry, I was too fast. Yeah, so it's a temporary policy. It's not like it's gonna be last forever. Usually countries do it for like 3 to 5 years, and then they might say, okay, we extend it. Why it's needed, this short term? Why it's short term? Because they're waiting for the local market to develop. Because when you issue green bond, you need external reviewers who will say, yes, this bond is green. Because if you just yourself issue green bond and say, this is green, just believe me, right? It's not gonna work. So usually you hire external reviewers. And if you cannot find in your country external reviewers, then you have to pay more for someone from abroad, right? If it's, especially if they come for European Union from high income countries, that will be more. So this local, this policy, short term, can help to develop local markets. So when your external reviewers appear in your country, so then people learn about demand, people learn about green bonds. So this policy is a temporarily helping to develop local market for around like 3-5 years. But later they can see if market well developed or not yet well, they might extend it or shut it down. So in fact, in Singapore, they extended it. Okay, so let me conclude, please. So green buildings have many benefits, like can reduce emissions, make your city air cleaner, reduce energy demand, which is very important for utilities, you know. They also not only reduce energy demand, but also make construction cleaner, like recycling construction material. But there are challenges with financing green buildings, as we mentioned. Green bonds, it's one of the instrument which can be used for financing green buildings. And what's best part of that, you can borrow from many countries. For example, if in your countries it's hard to find responsible investors interested in green, then you can borrow from other countries. So that's advantage of green bonds. But it's not easy. It's costly to issue green bond. That's why government can support it. For example, by subsidizing green bonds. Thank you very much.
Dina, that was excellent, right on the money. So exactly 10 minutes. And so I have a couple things to add about that, Dina. I did a session with the British Chamber of Commerce in Thailand last week, and it was with some engineering companies and a cement expert. They found that 39% of global emissions, and the numbers may vary a little bit, but 39% of global emissions are from buildings, right? And of that 39%, 28% is the energy use, and about 11% is the embodied carbon. The point of that session was really talking about how you can, as you get more efficient, then you still have all this embodied carbon in the steel and the cement. The other thing I'd like to add is just a little advertisement for ADB's work on thematic bonds and green bonds in buildings. I was involved supporting Pradeep Tarakan, who is the new Director of Energy Transition at ADB, working on affordable housing and green bonds for affordable housing. I'm sure you're aware of this, the National Housing Authority in Thailand. And so the issue there, the same issue you mentioned, how do you pay for having DNV come in and give a second party opinion? How do you certify? ADB had a grant to do that, but the National Housing Authority issued I think a $70 million bond. It was called the first bond they issued was social, it was a sustainability bond, sort of broadly. But they're planning on basically financing the building of hundreds of thousands of affordable housing units over the next decade using green bonds. And once you do it, you can go back to the market, like you say, Dina. So thank you very much. Next, I'd like to introduce a friend we've weathered many different incarnations together. We've worked together on PFAN, we've worked together on ADB projects, and now she is really coming up in the world. She's a Philippines country coordinator from the Southeast Asia Energy Transition Partnership. Her name is Fritzi Vergel, and she's going to talk about experience with the energy efficiency innovation window for Southeast Asia. So Fritzi, you have the floor.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning, everybody. I'm Fritzi Verhel. I'm the Philippines Country Coordinator of the Southeast Asia Energy Transition Partnership, or in short, ETP. So, very briefly, who we are a regional program. We work in the Philippines, we work in Vietnam and Indonesia. And what we do is we support countries in accelerating their energy transition. We do this by providing evidence, supporting governments provide evidence for policy making and also helping them in implementing these policies. So we do have very specific in-country programs, but this morning I would like to talk about this regional program, the Energy Efficiency Innovation Window. Um, so at ETP, we believe that energy efficiency is the least cost solution for decarbonizing the region. So therefore, it is a priority. And in 20 last year, 2022, we did this regional diagnostic study on energy efficiency, identifying what are the opportunities and the challenges in adopting energy efficiency technologies, approaches, and even the ESCO business model. And across the three countries that we're working on, the challenges are pretty similar, and the opportunities are all equally immense. So there's a lot of opportunities for energy savings, a lot of opportunities for investments, and definitely a lot of potential for GHG emission reduction. So these three countries, they have very specific energy efficiency targets, and these are all laid out in their energy plans, and all of them are aligned with their nationally determined contributions, so very anchored on environmental and climate targets. But apart from that, there are also very strong drivers, policy drivers for energy efficiency. So maybe for example, for the Philippines, we have the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Act. We also have very high electricity rates at about 18 cents per kilowatt hour. And these should be strong drivers for energy efficiency. In Indonesia, there's very limited enforceable regulations for energy efficiency, and the electricity rates are also very low. So maybe not a very strong driver for EE. But for Vietnam, there's energy security risks similar to the Philippines, which are strong drivers for energy efficiency projects. So while there are very strong drivers for energy efficiency, across the region, the uptake of EE projects has been very limited and very slow. And what ETP initiated is a grant facility intended to introduce or to test some solutions aiming to spark the activity on energy efficiency. So this is a grant facility offered already for 4 rounds. The fourth round is under evaluation still, but after the 3 rounds, there are 6 grantees. So basically, these 6 grantees are the EEIW facility aims to uh, address specific challenges across the 3 countries. So this covers market, this covers awareness, access to financing, and even policy implementation. All right. So this is a summary of our 6 grantees. And let me just go over it a bit at a time. So the first one is on awareness raising in Indonesia, and it is focusing on 24 schools at East Java, where there is also like an energy savings competition among the schools. There is also a project that aims to develop this credit guarantee mechanism for a specific set of pipeline of projects. In the Philippines, we have 2 grantees. The first one is with Climergy, and it aims to um, develop or implement investment grade audits of about 12 to 13 investment grade audits. And what it aims to do is to develop these bankable projects. After you do this IGA, the intention is to support them access financing through these IGAs. We also have another grantee in the Philippines is the EP Group. And this group is developing a business model for a super ESCO called ESCO in a Box. Very specific intervention to build the ESCO industry, supporting new ESCO companies or those who are not yet an ESCO but intends to become an ESCO. In Vietnam, we have two projects again. The first grantee is the target is to develop energy efficiency projects in the food and beverage sector, targeting 10 SMEs. And also there is a project to develop the standards for EVs, ensuring that this system and this infrastructure are all efficient. Actually, I'm very quick, so I'm already now on my last slide, but maybe this is the interesting thing to focus on. Um, so these are varied projects, and if you can see, we call it an innovation window, but the solutions are really not innovative. You've known about the ESCOs, you've known about awareness building. These are not really very new, but it seems like introducing this into the region has been a critical intervention or point to spark activity. But doing this, implementing these projects, some of the challenges are, being highlighted, or we encounter the same challenges that has been identified by our diagnostic study, and maybe similar to what Dina and Mafuz was talking about. But I think number one learning is policy is a great driver for energy efficiency projects. The intention is to create that enabling ecosystem, to create a demand for energy efficiency, and also to create an investment environment for energy efficiency. And it's not, and it shouldn't stop for just developing and creating these policies, but ensuring that the governments have the capability and the resources to enforce these policies at the national level. Market is a significant challenge as well. The awareness is not lacking. Uh, Host facilities, end users, they know the benefits of energy efficiency. They understand environmental and economic gains from energy efficiency projects, but still you see hesitance from host facilities to develop EE projects. And some of these stems from a lack of confidence on ESCOs, seeing that this is a new industry, these are new companies, and also lack of confidence on the ESCO business model or for performance-based financing models. For EE projects, if you talk to ESCOs, the number one challenge they will say is we cannot get financing for our projects. Um, so they do develop these projects. They seek for financing, but it's very hard for them to get the loans, very hard for them to get the investors. But when you talk to the banks, they will say we are ready to invest, but we can't find bankable projects. So both sides have specific difficulties, and finding that match, I think, has been become a challenge. Most banks and most investors still view energy efficiency projects as very high risk, and even developing a guarantee mechanism, de-risking products to support financing has been also been challenging. And probably because when you want to develop a, let's say, a guarantee fund or an insurance fund for EE projects, what they usually look for is a robust pipeline of projects, and developing that pipeline has been challenging and has been difficult. And lastly, on the ESCO market, on ESCOs, um, there is growing number of ESCOs, still limited, but there's also increasing capability among ESCOs. Technical capability is there, but what we see is lacking is the capability to communicate and demonstrate this financial savings. So just a specific example, this IGA project, grant project, we're giving these IGAs for free. So we were thinking, host facilities or companies would clamor for this. This is a free IGA, investment grade audit. But it's easy to convince at the technical level, maybe the plant managers, the engineers, they understand very well what the benefits are, the economic gains are. But when you escalate that conversation to decision makers, to top management, that's where the difficulty is. So ESCOs have to develop that, or need to develop that skill in communicating the viability and value proposition of their projects, not just to financiers, but also to the owners of the facilities, to the decision makers. There's also a need to highlight success stories, just so we gain confidence on EE projects on new business models and also to the ESCO industry in general. So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Fritzy. Um, I was worried there because since I'm the market maker, if you had gone 4 minutes under, I'd have to buy that back because there's not enough on the upside. So thank you for using, you have 20 seconds to sell. Okay, that was very well done. I'd like to highlight the fact that so I think this energy efficiency innovation window is fabulous. Are you going to have additional rounds? Maybe? Yeah, okay. So, but no, it's great because you get ideas coming from the marketplace. And I just note that 4 of the 6 projects or grants that you mentioned are related to financing energy efficiency, the credit guarantee mechanism with Danfoss in Indonesia, the financing of the IGAs, the investment grade audits through Climergy, our friend Alex Ablaza here in the Philippines. He's got a $108 million pipeline. In Vietnam, helping industries access financing for energy efficiency projects and developing bankable proposals. And then there was one more. The EP, the ESCO in a box here in the Philippines. So good luck with that. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm sure that will generate lots of questions and suggestions. So now we're going to go to last but certainly not least, a pillar of the South Asia team. He's had a distinguished career in the bank. Tika Limbu is a principal portfolio management specialist, head of the portfolio management unit with the Bangladesh resident mission. He's got a few copies of this report. I think he's selling them for maybe just $100 or so because there's only like 4. And we're going to convert it into an NTF and make it into a sort of crypto product as well. But this is a great study on energy efficiency in South Asia, opportunities for energy sector transformation. It represents years of work with a team, I think, led by Ram Srestha from the Asian Institute of Technology, along with Tika. So Tika, you have the floor.
Great. Thank you, Peter. Very good morning. My presentation, obviously, I don't have to explain that study, what we have done, but because 10 minutes won't be justice to this study, because this has been 10 years of work we have done throughout, and ultimately we were able to produce. And the history of this study is that in 2012, we had a general meeting of SASEC in Thimphu. So there, the developing member country of SASEC, where of course ADB was the secretariat, and I was working with energy in South Asia. So we started and we did some understanding of the roadmap of energy initiatives, energy efficiency initiatives, and then we started this work. And so this study is focused on 5 member countries of South Asia economic cooperation countries that we call SASEC: Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Nepal, and Sri Lanka. And obviously the problem is that the countries are growing fast and dependent on fossil fuel will have issues with the security and sustainability. And also relatively energy efficiency is low in these countries, and we have also high commitment on the this low carbon development, which is also a challenge. So to address these issues, this study was undertaken, and we've done in particular, it's an optimization model with a very big engine, and we have collected a lot of data. I'll explain that on later. And this is basically the optimization model where the cost minimization with respect to certain target of energy efficiency, energy reduction, or energy mix, or sectoral priority, whatever that policymaker would like to have, and that will be given by this model. And it also looks after the sector by sector, how it works. Like I heard our colleagues Dina and Mahfouz, industrial sector or the building residential sector, agriculture, transport, and so forth. And also we looked at the implication on the greenhouse gas emission and its cost. And at the end, we also looked at, like Fritzi was mentioning, the energy efficiency related policy, enabling environment, the barriers, those parts also we looked at. And in the end, the objective was to find out what are the areas of cooperation in the DMCs in South Asia. So there are two mathematical models that have been used for this study. One is called factor decomposition model, which looks after the effect of different factors like energy intensity, fuel mix, structure, GDP into the whole energy consumption, and which is very, I don't like to explain the mathematical model because we may not like that. It's just too boring. And another one big is the end-use model, which we have used a model called AIM, Asia Pacific Integrated Model, which is developed in Japan. That is I think it's not commercially available, but it was provided to us, and it can be provided to the developing member countries by the developer, which is National Institute of Environmental Model, and that model was used. And during the process, we have extensively visited all development member countries, and we looked at all the data, and consultation happened. And so the factor decomposition model gives us the different impact or effect of different activities. So in this case, we have seen two. One is for the India, another for Bangladesh, and how the different factors affects into the total energy consumption. From 2000 to 2016, the energy, of course, consumption will grow, but what are the different areas that will impact into the total consumption? And in the case of India, energy intensity and the structural effect have a negative impact on the growth of energy consumption because of the energy efficiency and also the structural changes in the sector, because some sector which are more efficient came up as a strong. So that is there, and this is the model. So there are several input to the model: socioeconomic, technology, energy data, and that will give us the energy service demand, technology selection, and energy consumption and CO2 emission. So this is a big optimization model with respect to meeting several constraints that we may wish to input. And this one example is, of course, it is a very too many data, but this one for Bangladesh. So it shows that how the different fuel mix, what are the different fuel mix and what are the different sector that contributes to the total energy consumption as in the business as usual case. And we looked at different, like we looked at the market, we did the assessment of the industry, the market, and we found what are the different technology that we call as the non-regret technologies, which are cost effective yet energy efficient. And what is the business as usual, what are the non-regret technology in different sector. So these are the input to the model. And we also looked at 4 different scenario, one is the business as usual, another is 15% energy reduction target, 30%, 40% in 2030 and 2050. So this study went up to 2050, and we also looked at the impact of the overall sector in each sector. And so the result, this is the case of Bangladesh. So we see here that in 2030, in the case of Bangladesh, there is a, compared to the business as usual, by using this non-regret technologies and other like a policy, we can improve the energy consumption or save the energy consumption up to 20%. And the industry and the residential are the key sectors which contribute 40% each in the energy reduction. And we can see also here the different sector. how they contribute compared to the business as usual. And this is on the, like we have created different scenarios, and how the fuel mix are contributing. What are the fuel like a primary source of energy that are the measure. Like in the case of Bangladesh, in different scenario, whether it is 15, 30, or 40% reduction, natural gas still comes as a prior a prime source of energy, because it is all about the cost. I mean, but the policymaker can introduce the constraints that whether they want only 20% of natural gas, 30%. So it can be a different model can be implemented, and the different energy reduction scenarios and different we can see that what are the different sectors that contribute to the energy reduction. So here we can see the transport, industrials are the key sectors in energy reduction. And also in the greenhouse gas emission, what are the potential of greenhouse gas emission reduction in different scenarios? It can be looked at different energy reduction target, and what are the different sector that contributes to the energy reduction target. So we can customize what is the policy that exactly we want to implement, whether it will be the commercial or industrial. So accordingly, the model will give the output. And this investment needs, this is of course number, I don't want to go into the number, it can be different, but what we can see here is that for the same scenario, if we have the energy reduction scenario, the total investment cost is still at could be lower than the business as usual in the energy reduction scenario, which normally we think that if we are deploying expensive equipment, it could be higher. But in the long run, because this looking at up to 2050, the total cost obviously would go down instead for the same output, because of the energy efficient technology. And for the whole system cost as well, it goes down, because in the whole life cycle cost, if we look at, then the total cost would even go down with the higher energy reduction target. And this is the message that we have we found from the model. And this model has been made for all developing member countries, and it is with us. And it can be it can be a very good tools for the policymaker. And this definitely will be useful, and we can customize different technology, like a priority, whether we want the natural gas to be trimmed down or the coal to be zeroed, and what is the cost implication, and what is the total optimized cost. And the model will converge. If it is not achievable, then model will not converge. So so this is one of the good tools that we wanted to replicate to all developing member countries who could use in the policy, and of course for to implement in the deep decarbonization. It will give the like a scenario that what exactly we would like to achieve in the for the decarbonization roadmap, and also other in the policy. So that's all. But because this is very heavy, so I just introduce it. It cannot, we explain in 10 minutes. It won't be justice. But if for any more information, this is publicly available. You can Google, and we also have few copies. So that's all from my side. And if any questions, that I'll be happy to answer. Thank you.
So I'd like to invite the panelists to come up, please. Thank you very much. So since I'm the market maker, I can also be the market taker. There's 2.5 minutes overage. So I don't have to make the market, I can take the market. So you owe me, was it a minute? And you, 30 seconds, minute and a half. I set the price. I need to figure out what the price is. Maybe over a beer we can figure that out. So, yeah, yeah. No, it's really well done. I'd like to. So please queue up at the mics if you have questions. We'd love to get back and forth discussion. I have some questions, but I'd rather start with your questions. But just a couple of framing comments. It is a pity. Tika mentioned that the largest potential is in the transport and industrial sectors on one of the slides. And one of the slides actually at the end said residential, but I think it's a real pity that at this Asia Clean Energy Forum, we're not covering transport. We have in the past, we will in the future. Jamie Leather, who's one of the senior principal transport specialists, spoke in the opening plenary about e-mobility and e-fleet, so that was good. But no, I think that's an area of energy efficiency that's really, really important. And more and more, e-mobility is a hot topic, and we'd like to integrate it into discussions of clean energy. So please don't be shy, stand up at the mic. I will monitor, and when you, just go ahead, you can stand up and queue up, and please introduce yourself. That's helpful, for you, for us to know who you are, and people might want to talk to you afterwards. So, sir.
Okay, thank you so much. So I could not wait to ask the question because those were very exhaustive presentations and very informative ones. So this is Omar Tsereteli. I'm Deputy Head of Energy Efficiency, Renewable Energy Policy and Sustainable Development Department of Ministry of Economy of Georgia. And so I'm very happy to be here today because that's very thematic discussions and so the presentations. So I don't really think if I have the question, but I wanted just to comment on the presentations you have made regarding the buildings and the energy efficiency factor within them. So we are just adopting the laws and bylaws as of now, the Georgia, to implement the energy efficiency measures in the buildings. But due to the lack of the awareness of the public and the social factor matters in this direction very much. And so we are financing some campaigns to raise the awareness of the people, to make them know what is the energy efficiency, how can it be achieved within the buildings, and so not to go on long enough. So from the 1st of July of the current year, the reform is about to be launched in my country, and so no any energy efficient building is about to be erected in the future. So just to get the construction permit from the 1st of July of the current year, you should meet the minimum requirements of the energy efficiency, and that's of utmost significance for us. But your presentation, Dina, regarding the greening of the building, so is maybe another stage forward, and so we hope also we will reach this stage in the upcoming years, and your just support in this direction would be very important for us, the support of the ADB. By the way, I just wanted to ask, and so I know I have gone long enough, and so so my question is the following. So what is the mechanisms, for instance, you are using to develop the energy efficiency factor in the buildings within the developing countries? So you have some, I guess you have some tools, you have some approaches, and just your experience in this direction would be very sufficient as to be shared. Thank you once again for such an interesting presentations from any of those participants.
Please stay there. I'm going to ask you a question before Dina answers. And by the way, you're from Georgia. I assume that's not the state, it's the country. Wonderful country. And Dina, where are you from? Kazakhstan. Okay, so you're close by.
I'm going to Georgia in July.
Okay, well, that's great. Well, good to make that connection. What percentage of the buildings can meet the new building targets that you're setting up that you mentioned? Is it like how many can pass, the ones that under standard construction?
So it's a very nice question. So right now, so we have the donor organization who is just identifying the potential of those buildings. But the problem is the following in my country, that due to the fact that most of the building stock has been built in the Soviet era, and most of them are just the old buildings, and they are not quite energy efficient, so they should be replaced by the new ones, which will be mostly the energy efficiency. And so we are working in this direction, but I can't now provide the precise information to you. So what is the area of the square meters or something like that, which will be needed, the energy efficient measures to be conducted within it.
Okay. The handsome gentleman to your right can help you. he has a lot of experience. You should talk to him. His name's Tom Dreesen. I'm sure he'll ask a question. But Dina, do you want to respond to the question?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you for your question. It's excellent to have question from Georgia. You are right. Green building is like a next level. I showed you a slide with a ladder, like first energy efficient building, then green buildings, then low carbon buildings, zero carbon buildings. So first energy efficient building, you're right. There are many policy tools which governments can implement. I think the main constraint for government is your budget, right? You don't want to, you cannot, like budget is not unlimited. You cannot spend too much money, let's say, on it, because you have also renewable energy and clean transport, other objectives. So how to make cost-effective policies, right? So it's great that you already have energy efficiency standards. So most policies will be based on your definition of energy efficiency standards. So for example, some policy could be like subsidized energy audit. So what countries did, they provide either for free or low cost energy audit, and then make it compulsory for companies to do energy audit. And then companies will see how much they can potentially save on energy efficiency improvements from energy audit. Yeah, and then they can implement. So some countries did it like either compulsory or subsidized energy audit. So this is provided, like you said, they're not aware. They don't know like how much savings it will be. Maybe no savings, right? And then also other policies like grants or subsidies. If you meet these energy efficiency subsidies, then you get these like carrots, let's say like that. So it's a carrots and sticks policies, and the country decides, yeah, because if you make too much sticks, you can harm your businesses, right? So usually they start with voluntary policy, then with carrots, and then go to sticks. And the government can start from public sector, like mentioned by Peter, affordable public housing, and also like schools, hospitals, converting them to energy efficient buildings. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and it just while you're queuing up, Tom, sorry, your name, sir, is your first name?
Omari.
Omani.
Yeah, Omari. Yeah.
Omari.
Yeah.
Yeah. So broadly speaking, you can work on the buildings, or you can also work on the equipment. I'd encourage you to go stay in this. If you come to this room in the next session at 11 a.m., they're going to talk about drivers for energy efficiency, things like equipment standards, cooling, and whatnot. And do talk to Tom as well. He has a lot of experience. I'd also mention that, Thailand, if you look at Thailand, they've had energy efficiency building codes and audit schemes in place for 25 years. Those were based on Japan. So there's a number of countries that have this experience with setting the target, providing the audit, funding for the audit. Tom, and introduce yourself, because I know you, but maybe some people don't.
Tom Dreesen, an old EE warrior for many years, been out in the country. I've had ESCOs in 11 countries. And so I am the author of the ETP study, the diagnostic study. And Fritz, you did a wonderful job. I really appreciate you doing so great. And ETP's efforts are, I think, the effort that they're trying to perform in EE and overcoming the gaps is phenomenal. I would like to just embellish a couple things based on, after I've done the report, reflections, and like I said, I'm an old warrior, and now I focus on things that are going to make a difference.
So when we started ASEF 17 years ago.
How's the first one? How's that the first one?
I introduced Tom as the father of ESCOs in Asia, and now he's the grandfather. We're not sure who the father.
We're looking for the father, okay?
Yeah. Well, what about the mother? Where's she?
I'm not going there, Peter. I'm not going there.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know. So
no, there are a lot of women-led ESCOs, and there's a woman actually in session one and in the closing plenary who's a sort of a leading woman in the solar and efficiency space in Thailand from Citron Energy. Anyway,
so I'd like to put a little bit of different framework on the Barrett challenges and a solution that I see now that time has passed, right, a year. I mean, clearly the biggest challenge is there's lack of demand for energy efficiency. I mean, in ESCOs in particular, I mean, that's one of their biggest barriers. I know that's so significant. And that's because of lack of awareness. I mean, just as an example, I'm in Indonesia. I've been there for like 5 years trying to get my ESCO going. I got $100 million of capital behind me, and I've made multiple proposals to large industrial customers, $5, $10 million. At the end of the day, they won't do it, even though I'm putting up the money to get paid from savings. So it's not necessarily a money issue. It's not necessarily an issue of they don't understand EE is the biggest problem. They don't understand it. More importantly, when it comes to putting investments, they don't understand how the savings are going to be equated to their bottom line. They don't have the confidence, which you did mention, which is a great thing. They don't have the confidence that the savings are going to be achieved, and therefore they're not willing to put up their money. But more importantly, which I was shocked about, they're not willing to do it on a shared savings basis because they don't have the confidence that they're going to be able to defend your claim that you owe them money, that they owe you money. So it's just quite interesting, in my opinion, just a different perspective, a little bit deeper than what you were saying. But I think the other gaps that what I see that are huge are the technical investment grade bankable audits. I mean, the ESCOs, they know how to do them, and we've done some programs here in the Philippines and trying to build capacity using TÜV Nord as the SIGA, Certified Investment Grade Auditor. It just brings it up a notch. And I guess the other thing, I guess, is just the overall financing is always a problem. So I think the overall solution that you highlighted up there, and I've tried to put in the study, is the solution. Any country that you've seen where energy efficiency has been successful, it's been led by the government sector. And the reason what the government sector enabling, going after the government sector, what that does is it creates demand. It creates demands, it creates a whole framework when they go out and do RFPs, created demand, what creates templates, it creates confidence in the marketplace, knowledge, successful demonstrated projects, all of that. So I think that's one of the things I would really encourage everybody to focus on, how to overcome those barriers. And we're trying to, the beauty is the only country that's having any success at that, in my opinion, is the Philippines. And that's where I'm trying to focus my time because of the energy law. It specifically has a law that says government, LGUs, GEs can use savings to be paid from savings. Now, there's a gap there in terms of getting from that to the actual procedures. And actually, it's one of my proposals to, to Fritzy and ETP is what I believe is that the other solution is to actually do projects, implement demonstration projects. There's lack of those in the marketplace. Successful projects and using those that use demonstrated processes and templates are key. So like,
Could you stay there for 1 second, Fritzy? I'd like, because there is no silver bullet, but this investment grade audit issue has been raised. Like, so in PFAN, we're often approached by companies who, you know, they have factories lined up, but they want someone to pay for the investment grade audit, which, how much would that cost? 25,000, 50,000?
Yeah, if you do a deep dive one, yes.
Right. So whether it's an industrial facility or a building, and that seems to be sort of a big barrier in the marketplace. So can you talk a little bit more about the project with Climergy, Fritzy, and are there any results?
Yeah, the
from
free
that?
IGA thing, right? Yeah,
Yeah, well,
what country is
so-
that in? That was one of my questions. I was ultimately going to get to the question.
So Climergy is run by Alex Ablaza. He's in the next session, by the
Also,
way.
it's Philippines.
He's
Okay.
There
actually
you
here,
are.
so
Hi.
maybe Alex can.
Right, so you've got some, and you can get up and say something if you want, but you've got money behind you. The IGAs could hopefully unlock that money, but maybe you could comment on that point, Fritzy, and if you want to comment briefly, Alex, as well. Because we're trying to, like, we've had not the same conversations. It would be like Groundhog Day if we had the exact same conversations, but we've been having these conversations for 17 years, many of them, and we're making progress. I just want to sort of probe and see how much progress we're making. So Fritzy, and then maybe Alex, if you don't mind kicking Tom away from the microphone there.
For a moment.
Yeah, and you can come back.
That's
yeah.
what,
Okay.
mind? Yeah.
Fritzy.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. And Peter. So for I think the rationale for this supporting 12 to 13 IGAs is to create these bankable projects. We've heard from the financial institutions that there are no bankable projects, and we need evidence for good projects, for viable projects. And this was a way to do that, to show that through IGAs that these are very good projects. You can invest in this. You can have confidence in it. So I think there's been Alex can talk about this more, but I think there's been a bit of slow start to convince and to find partners to work with, the host facilities. But I think now it's gaining momentum. Maybe Alex can talk about the progress more, but that's the basic idea of supporting these IGAs, that after you conduct this IGA, you can secure the financing and we can see actual projects happening, and we can use this as models. As like Tom is saying, we need successful models to replicate the ESCO
Yeah, so
business model.
maybe if we could bring in Alex for 2 minutes, just 2 minutes, because I want to get to garments in Cambodia. You know, I think the obvious way to take this is you get, I mean, there's lots of donors with huge amounts of, well, there's lots of funding, and it would not be inconceivable to have a funder set up a pool, a funding pool for IGAs across Southeast Asia or South Asia. So Alex.
Yeah, Alex Ablaza, Climergy. When I was energy efficiency anchor for this bank, we tried to set up aggregators and super ESCO structures across developing member countries. we tried with the Philippine government, and that attempt failed. So when I returned to the private sector, I had to create that super ESCO aggregator that would flow equity capital, that would flow investment grade audit subsidies to projects, to host entities, to ESCOs. And it doesn't only flow capital, it also flows knowledge and capacities. Because we see that the vast majority of ESCOs, they know how to do level 1 and level 2 audits, but the level 3 is not to an investor's liking. So we had to make sure that the level 3 audits that they were generating were indeed investment grade, were indeed bankable, were indeed ready for a capital investor such as Climergy to put money in. So it's the super ESCO structure was really necessary for both knowledge and capital.
Great. I encourage people to talk to Alex afterwards. Do you have your own fund, or do you have financial institutions who come in on different deals, or how does that work?
For the first tranche, which is something like close to $100 million, we get in equity partners for the Philippine investment tranche. We're with the Lopez Group, the first Philippine holdings, and we are combining our capital and knowledge for the first investment tranche.
Thank you, Alex. Great to see you again. It's been a whole pandemic, right?
So I just want to finish with one
Sure,
minor
yeah.
point.
And then we have some other questions.
And
So-
it's kind of like I call it a rifle shot. You know, instead of shotgun approach, and I'm doing a rifle shot right now, which is a proposal of ETP, and it really, I think it has some potential if things work out. Yesterday's LGU session, we're specifically proposing to do and implementing a project all the way through A through Z at an LGU, and use the street lighting as one of the major emphasis because it accelerates, but also LGUs are really one of the pillars within the law itself, you know, and the real benefit of doing that is, of course, we're going to develop all the templates and everything else that can be leveraged through all the government entities. And what it solves is one of the major gap right now between the law and implementation of government projects being paid from savings. I mean, I happen to be created most of the GEMP guidelines for all the attachments, and in there, and I put those, you'll see IPMVP attachment and all that stuff. That's amazing. That's verbatim my language. But anyway, the point is, what I did put in there and they left out was the procurement regulations, how to procure an ESCO and how to use the savings to be actual the procedures. And so no municipalities won't touch projects unless they see the actual. So we're doing that, and hopefully we can be successful in that and it'll overcome and open up the governmental sector. Again, that's where I believe the real focus is in terms of opening up the market for ESCOs, just awareness and everything, not the private sector.
Okay, so we'll leave it there. On that point, I agree completely. Government leadership is important, and actually government doing it in its own facilities can stimulate investment in others. So we have, Tom.
Yeah, I just have one question for Dina.
So,
What's
Tom-
the
Tom-
delta on the interest rate between government green bonds and the market? What's the, Dina?
Yeah, so what's the greemium?
Yeah,
and
what's
please,
I will.
we have a couple other people who want to talk as well.
Okay.
Yeah, so the greemium, is there a greemium so far in the green bonds that you've seen, delta in the interest rate?
Yeah, actually, this important question, but it depends on many factors. There is like maturity and like so many factors. So I cannot say. Like I think there are many debates about that.
So in the case in Thailand with the National Housing Authority, there was not an initial greemium. It was basically to signal to the market, and the National Housing Authority basically published its sustainable financing framework, and they expect a greemium in like the second and third rounds of a few basis points, but it's not clear. It's a good question. This is the question you should be asking. Yes, sir.
Hello, everyone. My name is Salim Jan. I'm from Kazakhstan, Ministry of Energy. I want to thank all the speakers for the presentations. It was very interesting. In my own humble opinion, I think we have to look more into the energy saving sector rather than looking to the developing the renewables, because we consume too much. We consume too much. We should lessen the consumption part, and then we would not need to build anything new. That's my humble opinion.
Okay.
So
how many people in the room agree with that humble opinion? Stand up. Okay. How many agree or think that we should actually focus on renewables first and not care about how much energy the buildings waste? Okay. Wait, one in the back. Okay. But he has a question. Yeah. No, he had, no, we're not. We're welcoming community, Tom. And that gentleman also has, I believe he has a question, so we'll go to you next. Yes, sir.
So in Kazakhstan, we have set the legislation on the energy efficiency part, and more or less all the industrial facilities, they are moving in that direction. We have the audit, we have all the measures set, and the people are working on that side. I mean, we have the list of the companies, the big consumers, and they are making the audits and they're taking their measures and stuff. But in the later years, we faced another problem, which is about the housings. I mean, the buildings where people live. And we have set the rules. We said that we have the energy class efficiency indicators like A plus, B plus, and so on. I think it's almost like every way should be the same. Yeah. But for now, we have the problem in terms of difficulties. We cannot define, we cannot control. After the building is we have the drawings, everything is agreed. We say that it is A plus energy efficient building, but we cannot check it. I mean, we cannot control the building process, and after it is being after people move in, you cannot check it. I mean, and how does it work in other countries?
So,
What's the
so we'll
best
get a
practice?
quick question for Dina. I mean, that's a known problem. The building certification schemes measure the quality of the building construction and things like that, but they don't measure actual. And there's, it's a known problem. It's difficult. Dina, do you want to comment on that? And then we'll go to the next question. And then I do want to get back to Cambodia and the garment sector.
And
so,
I have
Dina.
One little small question.
So okay. So ask the second question. We'll take them both at once.
And the second question is there like in the world instruments in terms of stimulating people, giving the less tariffs for the buildings who has much more energy efficient, who has used much more efficient technologies in terms of tariff regulation?
Yep. Okay, that's a great idea too. Do you want to comment, Dina? And then Fritzi, if you have any comment.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I can give example from Singapore. So they knew about this problem, like how not just only to have this, let's say, energy efficient or green buildings, but how to make sure that it remains energy efficient or green building. So they developed own Singapore national green building certificate, and they put in that certificate to make sure that it continues to be green while it's under this certificate. So maybe I think Singapore example is good, but I would like to hear other speakers.
Yeah, maybe Fritzi and also Tika, if you have any comment on so there's two questions. One is, how you can sort of monitor the building and have some awareness that the green building is actually operated efficiently. And the second is this idea of actually giving people a discount on using less energy or charging more for if people use more energy. That idea has been around a long time. I'm not aware of it being implemented. So Tika first and then Fritzi.
In case of India, we have seen the PAT, they call the perform, achieve and trade. So that is an incentive that government provides, which still is not rolled out in other countries, but it's a very good incentives in terms of like a front loading of the the tax and other. So that is really working, but not in the building. It's mostly in the industrial sector where they're all the listed industries.
Just briefly, maybe you can talk to Tika afterwards, but it's called Perform, Achieve, and Trade, PAT. And when it came out, it was a bit controversial because, how do you actually measure this? But there is a market now in tradable energy savings from this PAT mechanism. There's a lot of companies companies have to report it, and so there is a bit of a market. I don't know if anybody else here knows about it, but you could talk to Tika about it. It's worth looking at. I'll also mention, if anyone's interested, Alex has a lot of experience on ESCOs and monitoring and verification, and Tom is a member of EVO, the Efficiency Evaluation Organization, which actually looks at ways of measuring and energy efficiency and certifying energy auditors and people who basically monitor the savings and the performance of buildings and also equipment to do that. Fritzi.
Yeah, just maybe very briefly on policy and for subsidies for less energy consumption. So in the Philippines, there's now a lot of provinces or municipalities are doing local renewable energy planning,
Your
energy
attention
efficiency.
please, attention please. ADVHQ experienced a minor tremor a short time ago. Building assessment is ongoing. There is no need to evacuate. Normal activities can continue. ADVHQ experienced a minor tremor a short time ago. Building assessment is ongoing. There is no need to evacuate. Normal activities can continue.
I felt fine until I heard that announcement. Then I felt a little shaky and like, was it the second Scots last night or like, whoa, wow. Did anyone feel anything? I felt, yeah, okay, wow. What's the Richter? How many? Holy, wow. Okay, I'm feeling a little shaky, but we'll soldier on. Okay, Fritzy, go ahead.
Yeah, just to continue. So just very shortly. So there's now policies being undertaken by some local governments, reducing real estate tax, the annual tax for land. If your building or house has a rooftop solar. So the idea there is some of the local government units and maybe even some of the governments view solar rooftop as a form of energy efficiency measure, which is another discussion, of course. But for example, in our law, it is included as an energy efficiency measure because it reduces the energy bill. But I think that is the easiest way for local governments to say that we can provide you with some incentive and subsidy because we see there's a solar rooftop. But actually measuring is really a challenge, I think, across all sectors.
Yeah, and I think experience has shown that it's actually a good entree to a building owner to bring in the solar and then package the efficiency with it. It's a pretty well-known model, and it's actually not, I know a few people who developed a business that way because it just starts the conversation because you have some initial capex or you're leasing it or whatever. Okay, gentlemen in the back, you had a question. Sorry to make you wait.
Good morning, Raza Farooq from ADB. My question is to Tika. First of all, thank you very much for sharing with us a very complex modeling exercise. My question is, the policymakers in the countries, especially our DMCs, they are not essentially energy specialists. And plus they don't have much time to pay attention to such work. So if in order to implement the findings, the results of such modeling exercise, what recommendations will you put on for an energy minister of a DMC in relatively simple words so that they can understand? Thank you.
That's an easy question. How do you take the 10 years of accumulated knowledge and actually translate it on the ground? I was going to ask that question to Tika.
Yeah, Raja, thank you so much. This like we had data, take TA. So we are trying to work with the the nodal agencies and to make understand how this model works and what are the different scenarios and what are the key. I mean, there are like a keyword called low-hanging fruits, which are which can be accessed easily, which can be achieved easily at low cost. So those are the results that we can achieve from this model. And in the long run, in the short run, of course, long run up to 2050, we have this, and we are trying to help the DMCs to understand this model and to also own and work on this. And that, I think, during our conversation, it was very much appreciated that they would like to really understand more and have it own and use it. And this gives a lot of idea and some sort of a roadmap for the policymaker. And obviously, there are a lot of options of mix and match and the scenarios to be created at least cost, which one will be the least cost in terms of achieving the same target. So those are all could be achieved from this model, and which is very scientific, but of course data intensive. And it has to be, obviously it is costly because we need to update regularly because things are changing, prices are changing, technology also gets changed. So this needs to be updated regularly, but it's not so complex. So we are thinking of helping all the DMCs in the South, like a SASEC member countries, to run this model and to keep with them and update regularly. So that is the like our plan for going forward.
Okay. We are at time, and since I'm managing the session, I am going over time, which means I will be in deficit, which means I will owe you guys or the audience. We can determine that later. But I'm going to ask for 5 minutes because I do have one more question to get into on the garments. If you are like totally need coffee, that's fine. We won't feel no. Just if you can stay, fine. We'll go 5 more minutes. Just to add to that, Tika, I have two suggestions for you to consider. One is, bringing, sort of policy making workshops, bringing the countries together to actually talk about transport policies or efficiency policies in way. And also I suggest that if you talk to USAID, they have a big program called the South Asia Regional Energy Program, which has resources and is actually working on this. We organized a shameless knockoff of ASEF called SASEF, the South Asia Clean Energy Forum. So we did that I'm part of the USAID team. ADB was there and invited, but it would be great next year at that. That's something that USAID could support ADB on. Finally, I'd like to switch over to garments because we're not at the level of the net zero and how we get there. We're really talking about what we're doing now, what we're doing in the next 5 years. These are really implementers, how we get the innovative ideas out there. And back to you, Mahfouz. It's a very good presentation. You audited 50 factories. So in the garment industry. So what are the next steps in getting these first 50 factories financed, and what's the level of interest and engagement from the clothing brands? I noticed that the brands were actually not in your diagram, which showed the money flows. And to what extent are the scope 3 emissions responsibility driving interest and action?
Yeah, thank you, Peter. Yes, for the financing, there are like different steps and different levels of motivations. So few factories have their own money. They've already invested like $2 million to implement mostly solar, but also some energy efficiency retrofits. So they are the pioneer already. They are putting their own money in.
So that's one factory, or that's?
There's like 15 factories.
Okay.
15 factories.
15 of the 50.
15 of the 50 factories at least spent like more than $500 to save, but they're like $1 million also came from one single factory. Yeah. And then we are trying to motivate the rest of those. So by 50, we mean it could be any 50 out of 750 factories that we have under our network. Now we are talking with different local banks. They also have some kind of sustainable energy fundings, few of them. And we are trying to connect them with the development financial institutions, including ADB. So they're like very interesting talk going on with ADB and also European Investment Bank. So we are trying to work many different ways. But you correctly mentioned about the brands there, which I missed because I didn't have extra pesos to pay for extra minutes. So, yeah.
You
so
can pay in dollars. I'll take dollars. I'll take rupees.
That's what I have. Okay. Yeah. So we have the brands. I mean, they are one of the most important stakeholders in the whole garment value chain, right? So we have like 11 international brands taken on board, including Nike, Puma, Adidas, but out of all of those, only H&M, they're offering a kind of concessionary financing directly only to their suppliers, of course, to finance those projects. So we are working with the brands very closely. We meet with them once in a quarter. And then the Model Green Factory program that I have presented today, that will also be endorsed by the brands. That means they will promote to their suppliers to implement this model green factory program. We have one more year to work with this, to play with all those possibilities that we have, and we hopefully can come up with a proper solution by May 2024.
This is very much like the green bonds where there's a gap in the market and you have a grant to sort of pay for the putting together the green bond. In this case, who is funding GGGI to do this? I mean, it sounds like great work. Are you going to be able to continue this process until the private sector picks it up itself?
Yeah, so it's our project Switch Government is funded by European Union, Switch Asia Grants Facility. So that is also co-financed by GGGI. We have partnered with AFD for a small part of it. GIZ is also one of our MOU partner. We're closely working with UNDP, but the main financing is coming from, of course, European Union. The discussions is ongoing with EU delegation in Cambodia for the future projects. We are working on it. But the main idea is TAFTEC, the Garment Manufacturing Association in Cambodia, they will be leading the way forward. And we're building their capacity. Hopefully they can take it forward.
With that, by the power bestowed upon me by nobody, I'm going to declare a debt moratorium because I owe the most. I went over 5 minutes. But I would like to, in all seriousness, I learned a lot today, and I'd like you to give a hand to the speakers, and also thank you